The Canadian Mennonite University Festival Chorus is getting ready to present a 300-year-old choral masterwork. The group will be sharing J.S. Bach's St. John Passion, a musical retelling of the Passion story that uses choir, orchestra, and soloists to bring the crucifixion of Jesus to life through beautiful, harrowing music that resonates across the centuries. The choir will present the final concert in this year's Winnipeg Baroque Festival, which has seen 15 concerts take place across the city of Winnipeg over the last couple of weeks. Janet Brenneman is the conductor of the CMU Festival Chorus, and she joins me in studio this morning. Hello, Janet.
Hello, good morning.
We're also joined by CMU's Vice President External, Sandy Koop Harder. Good morning, Sandy.
Good morning.
So we're going to start off with you, Janet. For those who may not know, can you tell us a little bit about the history behind the St. John Passion?
Sure. Well, the St. John Passion is a work that has actually seen, I think it was a little bit of maybe a pet project of J.S. Bach's. He first wrote it in 1724. And it was after a 3-year cycle of writing cantatas for the church. So he would write a new cantata, which was orchestra and choir and soloists, that would tell a story that related to whatever the liturgy was for that particular Sunday. He had a 3-year cycle of these cantatas. And so this was nearing the end of that, and he was writing passions. He started with the St. John Passion in 1724, and it went through several iterations. He kept coming back to it, kept revising it and adding things and taking things out. And so the one that we are doing is actually what historians think would have been his final version of it in 1749. J.S. Bach died in 1750, and so I'm not sure that this final version was ever actually performed with him, but it was, given his sketchings and various things that he had been doing, working on, this is probably the final version of 1749.
That's incredible. How would you describe the sound of the music to someone who has never heard it before?
Oh, okay. So it's there's a lot of variety in this music. I would say that this kind of music is really dramatic. It tells a story. So while it's all in German, you should be able to understand what's happening just with the way that that the music is told, that the story is told through the music. So the choir has very dramatic entrances because the choir becomes a bit of an angry crowd as Pilate is addressing the crowd, and Pilate is speaking to Jesus, and Jesus and Pilate have these conversations, and Pilate says, I'm not sure what you're saying, what is truth? And Jesus comes back at Pilate and says, my world is not of this world. And there's all of this kind of this really heavy drama. And J.S. Bach does a wonderful job of, portraying things like the temple curtain tearing in half when Jesus is crucified, and the earthquake. And he even has, music that is representing the sobbing that Simon Peter does after he denies knowing Jesus. And, all of these dramatic ideas that you find in John 18 and 19, because that's where it's taken from, and it's taken verbatim from there. All of these things are portrayed in the music.
What are some of the unique things that audiences can expect to hear?
Well, I think that some of the unique things are what I've been describing in terms of, the choir taking on this role of a crowd. So sometimes when you go to concerts, choral concerts especially, there's lots of different pieces and things sound different, and each little piece has its own story. This is one big drama. And so you will hear the evangelist tell the story. You will hear the conversation between Jesus and Pilate. You will hear very emotional, reflective, poetic ideas from both soprano and alto soloists. And you will hear in conversation the orchestra and the choir with all of these ideas.
How many people are involved in this production?
Well, there are 48 choir members. The orchestra is a 15-piece orchestra, and then there are 5 soloists.
Including our very own Nolan Kaler.
Including our very own Nolan Kaler, and we claim him as well as an alum.
I love it. Sandy, question for you. Many of the people involved in this performance are alumni of CMU or friends of the community. What does that add to this performance?
This is a celebration of I think, a rich, rich history that CMU and the Mennonite tradition have for choral music, and engaging the alum from CMU and the community members that are connected to our learning community is such an incredible gift to be part of as an institution, but also myself as an alumni and a singer in the choir. There's something so special about being able to come together with other people in music and also take on something that is this challenging. And there is just a sense of community around this that is really something special and something unique.
I love that. I didn't know you were part of the choir, and that's great. So, Janet, many people will likely be familiar with the Passion story. We were talking about it. It's gone on for decades and decades and decades. What does this musical retelling of Jesus' death add to the experience of the Easter season?
Well, oftentimes the Easter season, becomes quite commercialized. And I think that this kind of opportunity, this kind of work brings us right back to what Easter actually means. And it's interesting because, Bach worked in very much in churches in the Lutheran Church and worked with, Lutheran theology. And there's this really, really deep sense, and you find it in all of J.S. Bach's church music, this really deep sense that our reason for being, our whole reason, relies on, is because of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And so this kind of work continues to put the focus on that, on the death of Christ, on the coming resurrection. And it just is really something that I think has been really meaningful for me working on this in the last few months in terms of, keep maintaining that focus and bringing that to the choir and to the performance.
Fantastic. Sandy, this performance is rooted in deep tradition at CMU of singing large-scale works for choir. What can you tell us about the legacy that this performance is adding to?
So this choir, or iterations of this choir, have been in place for decades. It actually predates the coming together of CMU. CMU actually this year is celebrating our 25th anniversary as a university, but there's a decades and decades long legacy that predates that, coming from the traditions of the Bible colleges that kind of were the predecessor institutions to CMU. And many of the alumni are both from the CMU era and also the Bible colleges previous. And there has been, you're right, a rich tradition of taking on these kind of large oratorio works. And it has been a real gift, I think, both to CMU and to the choral music world here in Winnipeg and the community at large.
Love that. Sandy, what does sharing this story through music mean to the CMU community?
I think it's a way for us to engage in the story of Easter in a really, really direct way. There is something about the embodiment of music kind of coming through your body as a singer, and telling the story, this really profound story of the death and the Easter story that has really special meaning, I think, to the singers as we are part of, as Janet's saying, the crowd, those that are bringing Jesus to the crucifixion. And the sense of participation in that is quite a deeply profound and personally moving, I think, for a lot of the singers.
Just a real quick side note, I have been, not in a choral production, but a drama of this kind of story, and I've been part of the crowd yelling, "Crucify him," and I remember just my own body having chills and feeling the depth and weight of that.
And this is all in German, so the choir shouts over and over, "Kreuzige, Kreuzige, Kreuzige," and it really is, yes, it is that strength. It is, especially with the hard k at the beginning of either crucify or Kreuzige, right? Like it becomes quite passionate and forceful.
I'm getting chills as you talk about it. Janet, one last question. What do you hope audiences take away from this musical experience?
Well, I hope that what they take away is, a meaningful interpretation of this story, but also a sense that, this is community coming together. These things just don't happen. And we are not all professional musicians up on that stage. We are a community who loves to make music together. The choir loves to sing together. We love to, gather with alum and with our friends. And I hope that people in the audience sense that this is truly what CMU is and what CMU does.
Beautifully said. For anyone interested, the concert takes place this Saturday, April 19th at 7 p.m. at Westworth United Church in River Heights. Tickets are available at winnipegbaroquefestival.com. That's online. And Janet and Sandy, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much for having us.